Good evening and welcome to the Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for this Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. Ms. Howard, could we have the roll?
Atkins, Hartley, here. Holst,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Leeper, Lynch, here. Prideaux,
Here.
Saul, Wingert.
Here.
Note that Leeper and Saul are absent tonight.
All right, thank you very much. Our first item would be the approval of the minutes from the November 6, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve or any corrections?
So move.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. At this time, I'd open the microphone to anybody who public comment who would like to address the commission on anything that is not on the agenda tonight. Seeing none, we'll move on from public comments on to new business. Our first item tonight is a petition to renew the College Hill Self-Supporting Municipal Improvement District. And Karen, you're going to introduce this one, correct?
Yes. In accordance with Iowa Code Chapter 386, the College Hill Partnership has submitted a petition to the City of Cedar Falls for renewal of their self-supported municipal improvement district. The purpose of that self-supported municipal improvement district, otherwise known as SMID, is to support the ongoing administrative functions and support costs for the College Hill Partnership. And in your packet, you received a memo from the partnership. They have collected signatures, so every 5 years, they have to go back out to the commercial property owners within the SMID district, and you can see the boundaries of that district up on the screen here. And they have to collect signatures of support from at least 25% of the unique property owners within that district, representing at least 25% of the total valuation within that district. And as you see in your packet, they collected signatures from over 40% of that total number of property owners, representing over 50% of the total valuation within that area. So the state code requires that the city council receive that petition, which they did on Monday night, and then they refer it to the Planning and Zoning Commission for your evaluation, which is what you're doing this evening with the report that you received. I want to note that the tax upon property within the SMID area will remain the same at $2.75 per thousand of net taxable value per year, and that will commence in July 1st of 2020 and continue for another 4 years until it ends on June 30th in 2025. And at that point in time, it will be up for another renewal. So at this point, we would recommend that you approve the petition, approve the report that you've received, and recommend approval to the City Council for the renewal of the SMID for the College Hill District.
Great. Thank you,
I'd be
Karen.
happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah,
And I believe the partnership, there's representatives from the partnership here tonight.
Okay. Is there anybody from the partnership, College Hill Partnership, that would like to address this with the commission? Okay. I would open it to any public comment on this item then. If there's anybody interested who would like to make a comment to the commission on this. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. For any discussion or a motion? It's pretty straightforward. We do this kind of on a regular basis, and I think it's been a good thing for, well, downtown and College Hill both have SMID districts and very beneficial.
I would move to recommend approval of the SMID to City Council.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote.
Oops. I voted on Mr. Liebers.
Okay. Note that Winger's vote was actually listed under Leeper. And
Okay,
we,
all right.
just to correct that,
Okay, we'll
we
correct
have too
that.
many machines up here.
We'll let the minute taker know.
It's out of my way.
So we have all ayes, so that does pass. So that will go back to the city council then, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Our next item of business is rezoning from R1 to C1 for 4911 University Avenue. And JD, you're introducing this one?
Hello, good evening, everyone. The second item on the agenda is to rezone the property located at 4911 University Avenue from R1 to C1. As you can see on the screen, the area is highlighted in red, and the part of the C1 that is the adjacent property is also being owned by the similar owner. However, some brief introduction about the site that is to be rezoned. So property is about 0.34 acres. It currently contains a single-family house with an attached two-car garage and a detached accessory structure. And this property is a registered rental unit since year 2003. Owner also owns the adjacent property, that's 0.42 acres, that's 4919 University Avenue. And 4919 University Avenue was rezoned from R1 to C1 in order to convert the existing house into a commercial office in year 2001, restricted with a zoning agreement to all aspects of MPC code. However, the request here by the petitioner is to rezone the property 4911 from R1 to C1. Petitioner wishes to tear down the existing house and wish to keep the attached garage and the detached accessory structure, and wish to use both of them. However, that could only be possible if the lots are combined and probably have the same zone. So the petitioner also agrees to keep the zoning agreement intact so that the future of the property could be developed in conformance with MPC code. And as on the image, you could see that it clearly shows the site image, what it looks like right now. So the analysis by the staff was the University Avenue is currently a high-traffic commercial corridor, and for which the MPC district was established in order to control the development. And so for this property, all the public services are available. Property currently have access from University Avenue, and if combined, will also have from Veralto Drive. However, staff notes that no new access points to University Avenue or Veralto Drive will be allowed. And the other important aspect, as you can see on the image on the right, that it also aligns with our future land use map. So if you see that south part is more of low-density residential area, and the northern part is the planned development, that's commercial, and so it all aligns. So staff recommends approval of rezoning request at 4911 University Avenue from R1 to C1, subject to a conditional zoning agreement that ensures that future development of this property is in accordance with standards of MPC district, and no new access point from to University Avenue or Veralto Drive will be allowed as outlined in the staff report. Any questions, comments?
Thanks, JD.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to make a comment, address the commission on this? Please give your name and address. And
Good evening, I'm Brad Jacobson, and I live at 806 Latham Place in Cedar Falls. And don't have much to add to his report. He did a very thorough job. I've owned the property since '03 and had it rented out, and currently had a situation where the tenants moved out because it's a two-story home and they weren't mobile. And so we've looked at the condition of the house and decided that it makes more sense to have it as a commercial property than as a residential property. And so that's why we've made this request. And down the road, anticipate maybe expanding my office. I have an office at 4919 University Avenue, which is why I bought the property back in 2003. In that it had been run down and needed to be cleaned up, and so I wanted to have a good appearance in the neighborhood. And so that's my goal, is to keep it looking nice and potentially expand my office down the road in the future. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Brad?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this request? If so, come forward to the microphone. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for comments and action.
It's pretty straightforward. It makes sense, and we've done that before along there, so.
Yeah,
I would-
it falls in with kind of the master plan
Yeah.
for that area as well.
Yeah, I would move to approve.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. And again, we have all eyes on that, so that passes. What's the next step on that? Is that going to city council then pretty quick, or?
Because it's a rezoning, it will go to the council to set a public hearing. That public hearing will likely be in the new year.
Okay.
And then it will take 3 votes at council to get passed.
Great. Thanks, Karen. All right, our next item of business is preliminary plat and final plat for Green Hill Village Estates. And David, you're introducing that one.
Thank you, Mr. Holtz and the commission. I want to go over preliminary and final plat for Green Hill Village Estates. I'm going to combine this presentation. Normally, when we receive a plat, it's for a larger area, like a 40-acre parcel. We would do the entire preliminary plat for that, and then the final plat might just be a little smaller area, like for a phased approach. But this is one and the same. It's a one-lot plat there at the along Ashworth Drive and Algonquin Drive, and just north of Ashworth down in the Green Hill Village. So it's a one-lot subdivision on just over 8.5 acres. Tract A is along the north side of that property, so the image is rotated. So Tract A is an extension of Lauren Drive there for approximately 300 feet off the west side of Algonquin, and that will be part of the public improvements for this plat. The lot is kind of set up for a new proposed senior living facility there on that 8-acre parcel. We have a number of elements here. That's the lot boundaries, then the tract on the north side. There is an access drive easement there along the south side and along the west side of that property that kind of works with the site, and that's another staff report we'll go here later. But that is a driveway off the south end of the corner there off of Algonquin. It wraps around the site up to Lauren Drive. And along with that, we have a number of utility easements along that access drive, and typically we have them also along the road right-of-way, and those are 10-foot easements for utility purposes. Also along with this is a pretty large component of stormwater detention and stormwater routing, and that's identified mainly on the south and west corner of the site, and that's highlighted in that area, and I'm going to kind of go over a little bit on that. Looking at our existing conditions on this 8-acre site, there are existing storm sewers that are extended out from the existing subdivisions along the west side and along the south side, so that'd be on Addison Drive and then Ashworth Drive. And basically the site is uncontrolled. It just runs through the middle of the site, kind of in a west to southeasterly direction, and eventually ends up in a pipe that goes into the Addison Drive storm sewer system and eventually into the area-wide detention basin, as you can see on the south corner of the map. So right now it's kind of an overland flow from the west and then along the south and then into that basin. The plan for this area is identified as, again, using these existing storm sewers and really going to essentially connect the dots. You know, the developer plans to install a 30-inch sanitary sewer or storm sewer. That's a pipe that comes from the west. It's going to travel along the westerly border, kind of around that access or road easement that I just showed, and then connect into that pipe. So really that takes the off-site water that's generated into that pipe, and it, instead of providing it in a ditch, they're going to carry it through a pipe to the other outlet on the south side. That easement is also part of, it'll be graded and to accommodate any water runoff that runs from the west, those lots from the west, and that'll be channeled down along the side and then again back down in the south end of that site. The developer kind of met with some property owners over the summer months just to kind of introduce this project, and one of the comments that they had was possibly creating a berm there along the west side of the property. But their engineer did take a look at that, and instead of doing a berm, they wanted to do a swale just to capture that off-site drainage, because it does flow from those properties onto this site. So if you create a berm, it kind of disconnects or cuts off that drainage. So we want to make sure that drainage flows appropriate through this site. And so that was kind of one of the issues that they looked at. I'm going to go a little bit more detail in the site plan about this, but that was just kind of one idea to create that stormwater runoff. The site also includes some additional pipes generated for the overland or on-site water that's created along the east side. So that'll be collected in some basins. They're really dry basins in the yard areas, and that will kind of transfer the water through the parking lots and into a wet pond that's identified on the map here. Also, it creates some piping around the proposed building there to catch everything on the east half of the property, and then additional storm sewer pipes are created along the west half there along the driveway, and then empties into that pond. So that pond is essentially a aesthetic pond. It's a wet basin. It's something there for the owners there that they can use, and it also serves as a detention facility. So they'll have a outlet structure that keeps the level of the pond at a certain level, and as that fills up, it'll overtop and then travel in a pipe into the existing or proposed pipe that'll eventually run down to the area-wide detention basin. So that's kind of the layout. So if I throw in the site plan, it really kind of shows you how that routes around the building, down the driveway, and through the parking lots into that basin. So I just wanted to give you kind of a visualization how those proposed storm sewers function through this site. So with that in mind, the plat documents are fairly in order, so what we want to do tonight is just gather comments from the commission and public and then continue that discussion at the next P&Z meeting on December 4th.
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, so this is a review and discussion item. Both this and the next, are we kind of wrapping these two together, David? Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're covering both 3 and 4 for those who are keeping track on their agenda.
This is just number 3. It's a preliminary and final plat review.
Oh, I got you, okay. Is anybody representing the applicant here that would like to address the commission? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Jacob Wolfgang. My address is 4720 40th Street in Des Moines, Iowa. And I'm with Nelson Construction. I'm under contract to purchase the land now. Proposed 120 apartment homes for assisted living and memory care here in a very residential building. Met with the neighbors a few times back in May and then in September. May was early on when we put the land under contract. Just wanted to talk about what we had planned and get their initial early feedback, and then came back right around the time we had submitted this site plan to get their further feedback and show them what we've done so far. So see a few in attendance. happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for,
I did have a question about that the parking lot seemed to be a lot of impermeable surface. Is there any plans to have more permeable surfaces put in there just to help with water runoff?
That's a great question for a civil engineer. I know that the calculations were done for the wet detention and the runoff is accounted for, but.
Hello, Nick Bettis, Acting Consultant, 60 East Court Street, Iowa City, Iowa. As far as the stormwater in the parking lot, our calculations account for the hard surface, and all that area goes into the wet detention basin, and it's a controlled release per the city requirements. We have not had, I guess, discussion as far as looking at making any of those pervious, as we're trying to meet that as a hard surface.
Okay.
any other questions for the applicant at this time? I may call you back if something else comes up. Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to make a comment or on this item? Please come forward and give your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Lee at 1415 Ashworth. We're on the southwest corner of Ashworth. So we have not been able to come to earlier meetings, but when we received our mailing, we really wanted to get to this one. We, my husband and I, Randy, we took time and with a magnifying glass and really magnifying and really looking at what the plot was, how it was labeled, and we have several concerns. So the first concern we have is what we have called the perimeter road. There's a little road that runs around that outside or back along, you know, goes west and then south around it. We are wondering how far that is from our property line. I can't tell that, but we are wondering that. And we're wondering what the usage, what the traffic is going to be on that. We already have Ashworth that out in front of us that has increased a lot of traffic recently due to people understanding it's a great link between Hudson and Green Hill, people wanting to go to the park, which is an awesome place for children. There's a great deal of traffic jamming right around that area as well. But now if we have this busy Ashworth in front of us, are we going to have another busy road immediately behind us, which eliminates all of our privacy? So I do have a concern about that, and we're wondering about the traffic on that. We call it the perimeter road. I don't know what it's actually called, but that's what we call it. Secondly, you addressed the wet basin a little bit this evening, and I do have more concerns about that. And the concern is that that is right outside, again, our back door. And we are wondering if that is stagnant water, if that's a pond that sits there, if there are going to be problems with mosquitoes, how that will be addressed. We're kind of wondering about that. I'm not opposed to water, but will there be a fountain in it to keep that water movement, to give it movement and to keep it from stagnating? Will there be times when there will be no water in there at all and it will become more like a quagmire or something? We're just wondering about that. There is a great deal of runoff in that area that flows, I would say, southeast. There is property on Ashworth further down from us, about a half a block, where water runs through people's two owners' yards and onto the sidewalk and out onto the street. And when we have a lot of rain, that happens on a regular basis. So we already know there's a great deal of runoff at that point. So I can't even imagine putting a parking lot in there, how that's going to increase that. And with a basin there, that seems plausible. But I'm also wondering then, in a dry season, what's going to happen to that wet basin? So will it get scummy? Will it start smelling? We understand what can happen, and so we're wondering about that. The third thing is we're a little bit concerned about light pollution. So we're wondering about the lights that will be up, if that road is right next to our backyard. Is there going to be lights on that perimeter road? We have a great deal of light from Casey's already, and so we've learned to live with that. But at some point, if there's going to be a lot more lighting done on this property now, then that's a lot of light pollution, and we wonder how that's going to be attended to and how that pollution will be reduced. Also, we're talking and wondering about noise pollution. Again, if there's traffic around on that road, what's going to diminish that noise? Is it going to be trucks on that road? Is it going to be delivery vehicles? Is it going to be just cars, or is there going to be much traffic on it at all? So we would like to have that answered, because the possibility of us facing two high traffic areas on both sides of our house, that's not acceptable to us. We're not opposed to development. We never, when we bought our place that we have, we never thought it would be a development like this. We anticipated homes being behind us with backyards that butted up to ours, and that's very acceptable. And there's nothing we probably can do to stop this development from occurring. But our question would be, can some of it be attended to so that it's a little bit more easier for us to live with? The last thing that we are wondering about is what that landscaping is going to be on that back side. Certainly, our backyard is going to be on the back side of this huge development. So we wonder about garbage. We wonder about who's going to be attending to that. We're wondering about how it would be kept up. We're wondering about the landscaping. So I do want to thank you for keeping us informed, and I do want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to air our concerns. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know.
If we can just kind of focus on the plat, and all those site plan elements will be discussed on the next item.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
So several of these, I think, the drive distance, those are all kind of site plan things rather than, so we will kind of wait and address probably a lot of your comments on the next item then.
Yeah, maybe just to clarify for the folks in the audience that may not know about the distinction. So the first item is really about setting up the lot and the legal aspects of the lot, and also to set aside the space for Lauren Drive to be extended.
Right.
So it's about setting up the infrastructure to support development of the lot itself, and then the site plan will go into a lot of those details about the actual development of the site.
Specific use issues.
Right,
and
so I
things like
think
that.
if people here have comments about, the design of the building, the design of the site, the landscaping, those kinds of things, I think David's got quite a bit more in a presentation after this item
We'll be talking about that portion of it on the next item, just so everybody's kind of on the same page.
Right.
So is there any other comments people would like to make regarding the platting of the land? Give your name and address.
Hi, my name is Robin Frost. I'm from 4718 Addison Drive. And I'll have more comments later on the next item, but I did want to, since the subject of the berm was brought up in this item, I wanted to express some thoughts about that. I have enjoyed the fact that this developer has met with the neighborhood and the neighbors to get our feedback. And I've been in touch with him via email with Jacob since that time of the meeting about the possibility of a berm towards the north end of Addison Drive, which is the road that we live on. I think it's David's presentation, he mentioned that maybe a berm was not possible. The most recent communication I've had with Jacob, the developer from Nelson Development, is that there would be a possibility of having a sort of a tapered berm, is what I'm calling it. I don't know the proper language for it, but that would start towards the northernmost end of the property along Addison and quickly taper down for the purpose of possibly providing some visual barrier and some landscaping opportunities there. So I just wanted to mention that item at this time, and I may have some comments later.
Thank you, Robin. Anyone else who would like to make comments on the plating portion of this proposed development? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for any discussion. So this is a discussion item for this, both this and the next one. So gathering information tonight, and then hopefully at our next meeting, we'll review it again and take some action. So that's what the plan is. So commissioners, are there any comments or discussion or questions you have?
I should probably abstain from this item. I have some adjacent property. So
Okay.
I'll abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Wingert. As far as the use, I mean, that's falls within the master plan that's been in place, so that's, we're not looking at changing anything on that, so I don't see anything out of the ordinary on the plating portion myself, just kind of looking at it generally, from what I can see. Any other thoughts or comments back to the developer?
I think the plat seems pretty straightforward for whatever would go there. I think most of our talking points are probably to do with the site plan.
Site plan, yeah, I would agree. All right, so I think unless there's any other discussion by the commission, we'll move on to the next item, which is the second part of this development. So you're back on, David.
Sure. Okay, yes, this same property, we're going to be looking at a site plan for a proposed senior retirement facility. This is a site plan that shows the location of the building and the driveway around the south side. They show some public sidewalks along both roadways, some internal sidewalks. It is a 124-unit retirement building. The parking lot in the front is primary for the residents, and portion of the residents and visitors coming to the building. The requirement for this type of facility is 91 parking stalls, and they show 104 stalls, so they meet the requirements for the parking. The building's laid out kind of in a north-south direction. The south end is a memory care facility. The middle section is kind of your commons area, your lunchrooms, your offices type use. And then the northwest wing is, I believe, the independent living, and the northeast wing is more of the assisted living facility. They show a monument sign there on Algonquin by the driveway, and then dumpster location in behind the structure there on the west side. Moving along, just again with some more site plan elements. The memory care on the south side is a single-story structure, approximately 24 feet tall. Excuse me, it's 18 feet tall. The commons area is a 1- and 2-story building that kind of gets up to 24 feet in height. And then along with the independent living facility is a 2-story building. Initially, that independent living would kind of mirror the assisted living with a 3-story structure, but that was kind of brought up at those neighborhood meetings, so they decided to take that west wing and drop it down a story. And we'll get into some details with perspective drawings, but we want to see kind of revisions to those, that west side that shows us 2-story independent living facility. So again, the height is 24 to 48 feet in height across that section of the building there. The setbacks along both streets are 20 feet, and along the property lines are 30 feet. The proposed setbacks on the north side is 48 feet, and you can kind of see on the west side is roughly 57 feet. The south is 180 feet to that building, which is on the memory care side of it, and the east along Algonquin is 37 feet. The MU district allows taller buildings up to, I think, 60 feet in height. However, you have to increase those minimum setbacks proportionally as the building gets taller. So as this proposed building is situated, it meets all those setbacks and height standards for the district. Moving along with the landscaping plan, it does show a lot of mixture of trees and shrubs. What the developer kind of did a concentration of trees along the west side, mostly in the conifers, you know, the pine trees and the spruce trees that kind of have that full blockage all year round. And what I did is identified that mixture there along the west and south side that shows those conifers, identified as 6 to 8 feet in height as planted, so they'll grow bigger and spread out wider as they get older. The actual area of the site exceeds the MU district standards. If you deduct the setbacks, they're up to about 57% coverage of open space on that entire site. You can kind of see on there, it's roughly just over 200,000 square feet. And the minimum open space, and that's building, parking, and driveway, is 65,000 square feet. So they're over that open space requirements. And then we assign points to the site based on the size of the site, and they're over the minimum points on that, so they meet that. They have street trees and parking lot trees throughout the site, so they show a nice mixture of again, those types of species of conifers, deciduous, shrubs, and trees on that. So the landscaping plan meets the district standards. And as you can see there along the south side, there are some honey locust trees that are not highlighted in green, but there are some conifers there of spruce and pine trees there along the south end, as well along the west, that should create a nice buffer and screening there, minus a berm if that's decided to go that way. Moving into the building design, you can kind of see the front entry and commons area. Now this faces Algonquin as you come off the driveway into the parking lot. You can kind of see the single story as it moves to the north, as it goes into 2- and 3-story structure. Couple perspective views of that. It's a drive-up area, covered area there for drop-off. And what we want to look at in these building design standards are those facade elements. You know, you look at proportion, roof shape, pattern, materials, color, proportion, the building height, you know, 1 to 2 stories. Primary height is complement with other structures in the area. There's that 3-story wing that is removed from those surrounding properties that is closer to the Lauren Drive and Algonquin Street area. They show a number of windows, transom windows, floor-to-ceiling windows, mostly in the commons area, but in the units they have double and triple wide windows there. So it has a nice variety of windows and openings on that. With a roof shape, you know, you have your standard north-south direction, but then they pull out some side gables, so to speak, and some shed roofs on there. Some areas show some awnings over some lower windows that create that nice feel. The pattern is it's kind of a long horizontal lines. Just kind of move to the different pictures. You can kind of see some long horizontal vertical lines. The materials used would be a fiber cement panel with vertical fiber cement and horizontal fiber cement. At the bottom is a cultured stone material, so it has a nice base to that with that stone element. And then again, it's kind of a white and blue, slate blue and gray tones on that. You can kind of see some of those other elements as you look at the drive-through areas. It looks more of a craftsman style type of architecture, you know, with exposed rafters and window shades and some of those lower units there at that top picture. Just other site plan elements. A monument sign is located at the driveway there off of Algonquin. It's a 5-foot tall monument sign with again kind of pulling those materials off the building with that cultured stone for the pillars and a blue sign with covered or framed with some white wood beam stained beams. Site lighting, they show some LED luminaires around the driveway there and along the south side, and then around the parking lot. Those are 16-foot tall luminaires, and then 3-foot tall pathway lights. So that's just kind of around the walking paths around the site. The architect did submit a lighting schedule and a plan, that these are all LED downcast, and the plan does show that does not spread beyond the property lines. So those light diffuse kind of right at the property line. Finally, the dumpster and generator screen, it's kind of enclosed with 8-foot tall fencing with composite deck boards, and those are located off the back side of the building on the west side. So with that, we'd want to, again, gather comments. This is discussion purposes only. And also, prior to the next meeting, we want to show a revised drawing of that northwest wing that it was submitted as a 3-story building, a section, and we want to see what it looks like as a 2-story, as indicated in the application.
There were a couple items that were mentioned before. You might want to, if you can address
Happy
them.
to address any questions again. Nick?
I tried to speak to a couple questions that came up. The perimeter road along the Lee's property, just roughly scaling, it's roughly around 40 feet from the property line to the closest part of the drive.
Okay.
The pond is approximately 80 feet from them at the closest part to the edge of where the water level would be.
Sure.
As David talked about the lighting there, and I kind of spoke to the landscaping as well. Jacob might be able to speak.
The retention was an issue as well.
Yeah,
It's wet all year round.
yeah. The retention basin is planned to be a wet pond all year round. We're looking at having 2 or maybe 3 fountains within it for aeration purposes to control algae growth and also provide oxygen within it. And we are using it both for an aesthetic and also a functional purpose for the stormwater management.
Detention, you know.
Correct. And the size of it is within the kind of the limits to be able to sustain the water level throughout the year as far as the drainage area coming to it and the size of the basin. So we don't foresee that as being an issue as far as draining out, but it is intended to be wet year-round.
Great. Thank you. I think that, yeah, that answers a number of those questions, so.
And then the question about the berm, just clarification on that.
Yes.
There was some discussion as far as trying to provide a berm all along the west property line. Due to some of the drainage concerns, we are not able to provide it along the entire property on the west side. Like that southern half of it is that overflow drainage route that takes the water or any water that is in excess of what the pipe can handle that comes from the street to the west would overland flow. And we were providing a route to continue the overland flow around the site and where it continues to go to the south. So a berm and that part won't work. But from that structure,
You're saying, I mean, basically water coming from west of this property is potentially overland flowing
Yeah.
through there. Yeah.
correct. And that's the overflow swale so that we're not making a situation worse to for the property owners at that pipe outlet and also to the west there. But from north of that pipe where it comes out, that existing 21-inch, I believe it is, to the north, we're able to provide a berm that's approximately 3-ish feet high through that first property north of the culvert, and then it tapers from the 3 foot to the 0, as Jacob was mentioning, or as Robin mentioned through their correspondence, through that property. But then we still have the function of a berm continuing to the north, as most of the driveway, that access fire lane and access road is below the property, approximately 4 to 5 feet continuing to the north until it ties into future Lauren Drive at the intersection up there. So although we don't provide a berm, or we're unable to provide a berm further than that one lot, it is still kind of acting as a berm, as the drive is lower than the adjacent property.
Right, and I think one of the questions before too was kind of the purpose and use of that drive, and I think a lot of that is necessary to meet fire code, correct?
Correct. It's got multiple functions there. The fire protection is obviously one of them, so it is a fire lane. Also, the services, the drop-offs are provided back there, both deliveries and also refuse.
That's all happening on the west side.
Correct, yep.
Kind of that
And-
middle section.
Yep, and we do provide, I think it's about 16 parking spaces in the back, and that's for some of the staff to be able to park back there. So there will be some turnover as their shifts change on that west side. But they do have more than 16 people that work on the facility, and Jake and the crew might be able to address more on the traffic.
Good evening. I'm Ann Stanfield. I'm with Ecumen. We will be the manager of the community, the management company. And to address specifically some of the questions around traffic and deliveries, we anticipate having roughly 2 deliveries, food deliveries per week, and that would be on that back road. The deliveries ideally would be in the morning, which is pretty typical. The trucks would be semi-trucks, and they would be there for about 30 minutes. Garbage pickup is consistent with what would occur in a residential neighborhood. And in addition to that, move-ins, move-outs would happen from that back access as well.
Yeah, on the west side.
Yes. And just in general, I would say to note in terms of density and traffic, many of the residents will not have cars and don't drive, particularly those in memory care, and a limited number within the assisted living. So, I mean, it's pretty low impact traffic for a residential use.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions for the applicant? Further? While they're here? Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else who would like to address the commission, questions or other additional comments on this? Please come forward and give your name and address.
Hello again, Robin Frost, 4718 Addison Drive. Like I said, I've been in touch with Jacob a little bit over the past few months and do appreciate his willingness to listen to the neighbors and take into consideration our concerns. That makes us feel a little bit better. I will say that when we first learned that there would be a commercial building in our backyard, we were a little disappointed. And it still is a source of stress and worry, particularly about, what's going to happen to property values, and is it going to continue to be a desirable place to want to live. I think they've done everything that they can to kind of address some of our concerns, and they've been willing to make some adjustments. I just wanted to go on record and mention a few things that we're hoping that we've talked about with the developer, and then some other things as well that are on our minds as property owners to an adjacent property. We've talked about the sort of the tapered berm, hoping that will be topped with plantings and landscaping that will be attractive and create some screening and visual barrier. We do appreciate that they've offered to reduce the height of that west wing, at least the wing that's closest to the homes along Addison Drive. They've also mentioned placing some of the mechanical equipment in the roof, the structure's roof, for reducing noise nearby, which we appreciate for noise pollution purposes and being able to enjoy being outdoors in our yards. We've already talked a little bit and heard a little bit about lighting, and we do appreciate the idea that the lighting would be pointing down and not spreading out towards our properties. Just during the construction and the grading process, we're hoping for respectful work hours, and we know it's probably not going to be real attractive at certain points, but hoping that will take place during normal business hours. Hoping that, I think they've suggested that their landscaping will be visually appealing. We're hoping for a mix of not only trees, but maybe shrubs and grasses and flowers and things to create that nice environment for all. And that goes for people on both sides of the property, both us and the residents of the future building. We hope that they will continue to upkeep and maintain those plantings. Let's say that there was a disease that swept through and killed a bunch of trees. I hope they would be replacing those things to keep up the appearance of the property and that screening aspect of it. I've mentioned also in some previous communication in an email about concentrating those deliveries during normal business hours. Number of employees shift changes. I would appreciate if there's not a lot of turnover overnight. And then I think we'd like to be kept informed if there are plans that may need to change during the construction process. We'd really like to know about that and continue to be informed by either the city or the developer or both. So I think that covers most of what I wanted to make sure was on record. I apologize if some of that was duplication. I share some of the concerns of one of my neighbors, the Lees over here, although we are on the other street. They're on Ashworth and we're on Addison. So a little bit different concerns, but definitely appreciate hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Was everything on the kind of description of the berm, did that make sense to folks? I know it gets a little in the weeds. There's some ability to berm and some ability not to berm, it sounds like, by the way the land is laid out. So is there any other comments or questions from anyone here tonight that would like to address on this proposal? Please come forward and give your name and address.
I was just looking at this. My name is Randy Lee. I'm 1415 Ashworth Drive. And what I'm concerned about is, as I look at the entrance where this is going to be happening, it's real close to that playground. And we love the playground. We're educators. We love kids. But I know I've sent some emails to the mayor about they need to look at only parking on one side of the street, because when they park on both sides, we have one lane of traffic to go through. So now if we're looking at semis coming in the summer, and we have the playground full, this might be something that needs to be looked at. Not changing the entrance, but just changing the no parking to one side on the street.
Sure.
And maybe on the side that the location is for this new property.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for the suggestion. That does make some sense. Anyone else who would like to make a comment, please come forward and give your name and address.
Catherine DeSoto, 4606 Hudson Road. And I have a question about when you're talking about deliveries on that back road on the west side. I'm not clear which road that is. And I'm wondering whether Lauren is going to connect to Addison or to Norse. That's my question.
Sure. Yeah, does anybody from the development team want to address that?
Jacob Wolfgang. The question on the deliveries, they'll be on the service road, the fire lane that we're creating?
And I would guess that, just looking at that, I mean, they're probably going to come in one end and drive out the other end.
Probably, yeah.
Just, they're not going to circle back where they came, so one will either come in the front one and go out the one on the north, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Would be my guess, just looking at the way the plan is laid out.
Would there really be semis going in and out, or would it be more delivery truck sorts of vehicles?
Well, the majority of the traffic would be delivery trucks for move-ins and move-outs, just smaller trucks. But the food would come on semis, yeah.
It is delivered by semi,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Yeah.
David, are you able to clarify that?
Yeah, as part of this plat, Lauren Drive will extend to the limits of the lot, which is roughly 350 feet off the west side of Algonquin. Eventually, that will connect into Norse there off of Hudson Road, and then probably south down to connect into Addison too. So as that development on that other property, they'll put the street in with that plat.
Thank you, Jacob. Anyone else would like to make a comment or ask a question? This is the time to do it. Be coming back in 2 weeks, hopefully with any kind of revisions or that type of thing, so please make your
Hi
comment.
there. Ryan Frost from 4718 Addison Drive. I was just wondering if you could maybe review the lighting that is planned or proposed for the access road and how that,
Yeah,
if that's, what's the intention, how many light poles, and if that's going to be directed downward, and how that's going to be controlled.
well, I suppose the biggest concern for people is going to be on that west side access road.
Yeah.
What the lighting is along there, 'cause the portion to the east is really to the park
Street.
and, yeah, and away from most of the development, so. And there's no plan in here right now, David, that we were looking at with the lighting, but you said they have submitted something, so.
Yeah, we can submit that next time, but if the developer's here, they can
Yep.
provide some details.
Is there anybody from the development team that knows, can comment on the lighting, particularly along that west side, what's being proposed?
We do have lighting all along the west, or the south and west access road. I was trying to see if our plan that was provided indicates those locations. I don't see them offhand, but I believe, if I remember right, we had one kind of up near the intersection or the entrance off of Lauren, and then spaced periodically down through there. But that is part of the stuff that we did provide, and we can be shared next time.
Yeah, I guess the other pertinent question would be hours of operation. Are those lights going to be on all night, or are they just, like on a timer, they come on at dusk and go off at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever, or are they going to be on all night?
We will have staff coming at 11 p.m., so we do want to keep the site safe for those folks that are coming at those times.
Because they're parking that west side there.
Exactly. Yep.
So the lights will be on then, but is it intended for lights to be on all throughout the night, or just they turn off at a certain time?
I think that they're probably, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
that's
Yeah,
something I
we
think
can follow up on
people
that.
would
Yep.
want to know.
Yep.
Because, quite often, a lot of times, certain time, you're not having any business anymore. You don't need to have the lights on, and I imagine the neighbors would be appreciative if
Yep.
they're not on all night.
Yep.
So,
I'll check on that.
yeah, thank you.
I guess
Brian?
another question, just stepped away to give them, but are there any fire hydrants going to be posted back there, or what kind of things are planned just additionally for that? Just out of curiosity,
guessing
like
there's
if they
fire hydrants, 'cause
if
we
they
have-
bleed them, or
We have codes on that mandate what minimums on that.
I mean, are there, how many are planned now then, based on code?
I don't know if anybody can answer that question immediately.
Hey, there are fire hydrants along the streets and along that access way, so that'll be part of the plan review as if this project moves along. They'll work with the CFU for water connections and utilities, and also with the fire department on those locations for hydrants.
Will those lines also be showed in that map? Because you showed all the drainage maps, but as far as will you show the utilities that are going to be running through there? And
Yeah, we're going to let the civil engineer answer that question, I think.
Yeah, just doing a quick count here, we have, if I counted all of them, 5 or 6 hydrants currently shown. There will be continued coordination with the departments and fire and water as well.
So those 5 or 6 are just on
They're along
on the prop-
along the loop road, and then we have one up towards the front entrance for the FDC that'd be required.
Okay.
The second part of the question, as far as the other utilities, they are shown on our site plan, and they basically run and loop the site along the loop drive or the access drive for the water. Sanitary sewer also comes up and services out of the back of the building as well. There'll be I think the communications and those types of items will come through the back, the service area as well, and come from, likely, I believe it's from the Lauren Drive side as those are getting installed. But most of those services will come in the back side of it, and the water and sanitary will kind of loop the building there.
Thank you. else, please come forward. Name and address.
Yeah, I'm Debbie Lee, 1415 Ashworth. So I just have one last question. Has there been any research or study being done in some other comparable areas that we could look at that would show impact on the values of our homes with a development such as that in our neighborhood? Because, well, never mind why, but I would like to know that, so.
I don't think there's probably anything that's been done on that.
Well, certainly there have been developments in other residential areas, not only here in Cedar Falls or Waterloo, but also in other areas around the state or in other states. Certainly there has been studies or research on that, or, you know, somebody ought to be able to answer with all the engineers we have here, with all the developers. Somebody should be able to answer what the impact of that will be on our house values.
Jacob again. I can't answer whether the home values will go up or go down as a result of the development. I think those folks that have maybe flooding issues in their yards as a result of the water being not cared for currently coming through to the south would have a better living condition. Maybe the home value would improve there if they were to sell it, but I can't speak to whether or not the value would go up or down. I think we're proposing a very beautiful building. We've taken a lot of feedback into consideration and at our own cost. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. It's very residential in nature, and I don't know what it would do to home values.
Right. Thank you, Jacob.
Kathy DeSoto, 4606 Hudson Road. So still trying to understand about the connection from Lauren to where it's going to be connected with. So if it's going to Norse Road, is Norse Road planning on being further developed or anything like that? Do we know? I'm just trying to map this out onto Google Maps in front of me. We could, so.
Yeah, as part of our as part of our plan, it will not connect.
It won't connect.
Here and here.
Okay.
That would be
So it's going
further development. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We can show a larger aerial photograph at the next meeting if that would be helpful, just
I think
to
that
show
sounds like a good idea.
the general
yeah.
neighborhood layout.
See a little bit better. It's, I was just looking through the map. It's hard to put a little bit of the context together just based on the materials we have tonight.
I wanted to add a little additional information on the lighting. So we would have very minimal lighting on between midnight and 6 a.m., really just at the staff entry door.
Kind of emergency
some
type.
yeah, and some minimal down lighting just for safety, but
Okay.
the majority of the lights would go off after that staff change at 11.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else who'd like to ask a question, make a comment, propose a solution? Use your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Rob Swales. I'm at 1524 Andover Court. So I'm in part of that phase one on the west side. Just two quick comments that kind of been addressed. One, talking about the traffic down by the park. Just since that park has been redone and reopened back in Labor Day, it's not been uncommon on a nice weather day to have several hundred cars down there. So honestly, the parking lot down there that's constructed on that site will probably be, in a lot of cases, people going to the park fighting for those spots in their private lot. And then the other piece of comment, being on that west side, while I'll be specifically, half a block or so from the generator, from the garbage area and then the service entrance, but specifically we're zoned single residential on that west side, part of that phase one.
Right.
And the noise that might create as the vehicles are coming in and out for service to that. So,
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of the dialogue and and the willingness and the cooperation with the future developers
Great.
and with the committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, for your comments. Yep. Anyone else who would like to ask a question or make a comment? All right, thank you. Commissioners, any comments, discussion, questions?
I'll abstain from this item, too.
Yes.
I
Thank you,
just
Mr.
wanted
Meyer.
to compliment on the design. I think the design of the property is beautiful, and I think it really is complementary to the surrounding area and the homes and apartment. I always appreciate seeing the landscape requirement just being blown out of the water, so that looks beautiful as well. I also am very appreciative of the residents for taking time out of their nights to come and get their questions addressed, and for the willingness to have that dialogue. So it looks great.
Very good. Anybody else with a question or thought?
With respect to the park and the parking situation, I've personally experienced that and how problematic it could be, I guess, just because it's such a great park.
Yeah.
But I would want to see some encouragement of maybe, as a temporary measure, rethinking the placement of no parking signs, just to at least buffer the distance. And then maybe consider, as a longer-term solution, expanding the inset parking or adding a second inset parking, 90-degree parking area on the west side.
To conserve the park.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we've gone there on cold nights with my family at 8 o'clock and still had to park in the street. So not necessarily relating directly to the project itself, but just some things that I think should be considered. Couple of questions that might be maybe aimed at staff, I guess. There was some mention in here about or there was some comment about traffic, I guess. And I was just kind of curious if this type of building makes sense with the zoning and with the master plan and everything. Is there anything, any sort of hard data on the type of traffic counts or activity that we would see here versus what was originally illustrated in the master plan? Because the units are down, obviously, but we've got, at least according to the parking information, 60-plus employees potentially, and the truck traffic and everything else. And I heard that, obviously, the people that are here, less likely to have cars. I was just wondering if there's something more conclusive than that.
I mean, we can bring some traffic generation numbers potentially, but typically a senior living facility is going to generate less traffic than 144 apartment units, where people would be coming and going. You know, people would have more cars and be coming and going at all times of day. So,
Okay.
So generally, well, it's a little bit different type of traffic, but we can maybe look at some traffic generation numbers for those types of developments.
That was kind of my assumption as well. I just wondered if there was some tricks and resources to just ensure that, to offer some reassurances. And then, as far as the master plan is concerned, this is obviously a different style building as one building rather than, 12 plexes or whatever was exactly in the master plan. Is that wasn't in here, the master plan? Is there anything that has to be done with that, or what is the normal process for the master plan with a development like this?
We looked at that and felt that it was consistent enough with the master plan, with senior living being listed as an allowed use in the MU district and it being residential in character. It's less dense than what is shown in the master plan with multi-family units, so felt like it was pretty similar to, or actually less intense perhaps than 12 plexes, 12 apartment buildings.
Yeah, I'd much rather look at this. One more question about the building itself and the appearance. Can we touch on the need in, from going to 3-story to 2-story on the one section, or give some background on what that requirement or suggestion was based on?
I think that was, it originally came out during one of the neighborhood discussions, that
Okay.
northwest wing was identified as a 3-story segment, and that was brought out by the neighbors, hey, can you scale that back down to 2-story? And the developer and architect looked at that, and they kind of agreed that they can take that to 2-story. So hopefully for the next meeting, we'd like to see that schematic or that perspective drawing that I can share in the presentation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Commissioners, any other thoughts or discussion? If not, this will be, is it planned for the next meeting, or will we have a little longer time in between? What's the?
Well, we'd like to keep this moving, and if we can get that all this information part of the discussion, maybe probably see a little more detail on that berming along the west side. You know, we talked about that in the staff report. It did say that corner does sit in a little hole as you head north there. So maybe see a little more detail on that, and then some other issues with the lighting and the building design components, along with probably, you know, I can lay out some utility plans and show that to everybody and move along with this.
Yeah, great. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll move that on till the next meeting. That concludes our regular business agenda for tonight. We have commission updates. I guess, do you want to introduce this, Karen, or should I just jump right in?
I think you should just jump right in.
Okay. One of the things we have to do tonight as a matter of business is we need to appoint a nominating committee for next year's commission officers. And I did a little legwork here before the meeting, and I think I've twisted the arms of Atkins and Hartley to serve as our nominating committee, unless there's an objection from the other members of the commission. We need 2 people to serve as the nominating committee, and hopefully the next meeting, or at the latest, the second meeting in December, we need to have nominations brought forward that we can vote on for next year's officers. So if there's no objections and they're willing to do the job, I think we'll appoint them as the nominating committee. Good? All right, I think we got that business taken care of. We look forward to your report. Is there any other commission updates for tonight?
I don't have any other updates for tonight, so.
All right, so we can get on to the business of adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.